Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Just a few notes about our meeting format for the Planning Commission this evening. This meeting is being held in person as well as online. We're still operating in a hybrid format. Commissioners, planning, department staff, and members of the public are attending. In Wheat Ridge City law and also by law, we have the Zoom meeting platform. Members of the public who are not present and who wish to make comments may participate virtually by joining through Zoom, either on a device or by calling in. A Zoom meeting link and dial-in information can be found on the wheatridgespeaks.org website. In addition to being online via Zoom, we are also broadcasting this meeting on Channel 8 and wheatridgespeaks.org. When it's time for public comment, there are, is it 3 or 4 public comment periods tonight? 4 public comment periods. So those who wish to comment on our Zoom connection, use the raise your hand button available on the Zoom platform. If you are dialing in, press *9 to raise your hand and 6 to unmute your phone. If you plan to speak online tonight, please keep background noise to a minimum. And if you do not plan to speak, we recommend you simply view the meeting live by watching Channel 8 or on wheatridgespeaks.org. We appreciate your participation in tonight's meeting, and we hope to create a friendly and respectful atmosphere for public dialogue, and we appreciate your help in this process. So I'd like to now call the City of Wheat Ridge Planning Commission meeting for March 17th, 2022 to order. May I please get a roll call of members?
Jonathan Shelkey. Here. Jerry DiTullio.
Here.
Christine Disney.
Here.
Julianne Stern.
Here.
Melissa Antle.
Here.
Will Kearns.
Present.
Danielle Larson.
Here.
And Janet Leo is absent tonight.
Great. So the next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to approve the order of the agenda for tonight. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, great. Let's call for a vote.
Motion approved 7-0.
Great, thank you. The next item for this evening is the public forum. So we will now open the general interest public forum. This is a time for any person to speak on any subject not related to an item appearing on the agenda. If you plan to speak related to an item that is on the agenda, the public hearing agenda, please wait until we get to that item.
Madam Chair, point of order, we need to get the minutes approved as well. We did the agenda, and then we need to do the minutes.
Oh, I apologize. Did I skip that? Okay, let's back up a moment here. So the next item would be the approval of the minutes. So if you, let's see, Dan, if you were not at the meeting last month, please do not vote on this item. But is there a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And let's call for a vote.
Motion approved 6-0 with 1 abstaining.
Great. Well, thank you for that clarification. Now let's return to item 6 on our agenda, which is the public forum. And again, this is an opportunity for any member of the public that is interested in speaking on any sort of general interest item. You have the opportunity now to speak. If you are interested in speaking on one of the cases, we ask that you refrain to and speak when that item is called up. Is there anyone signed up to speak in the general interest public forum?
No one has signed up.
Okay, great. Is there anyone joining us by Zoom that is raising their hand to speak?
There are a few people on Zoom. If you would like to speak at the public forum, please either raise your hand. If you are on the phone, which it doesn't look like anybody is, please press *9. Currently, nobody's raising their hand.
Okay, well, with that, I will go ahead and close the public forum. Okay, so tonight we have 3 public hearings, and before we begin, I would like to again begin by welcoming any members of the public that are here. It is important that that the public hearings be conducted in a dignified and civil manner. Our hope is that we create a friendly and respectful atmosphere for public dialogue, and we appreciate your help in this process. I ask that you respect the statements made by city staff, the applicant, and my fellow planning commissioners. Please do not clap, yell, boo, make commentary from the audience, or otherwise disrupt the proceedings. We'll start the public hearings with a presentation from staff and in some cases, with a presentation from the applicant. After the presentations, the commission will ask questions of staff and the applicant. After that, we will invite members of the public to comment as well. So now I will go ahead and open the public hearing for case number WS-21-04. May I please have the staff report?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Stevens, and I'm a planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. I'm presenting case number WS-21-04, which is a request for approval of a replat to consolidate 23 lots into 3 lots on property zoned MUN and located at 5800 to 5990 West 38th Avenue. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the subdivision regulations, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and therefore Planning Commission has jurisdiction to hear this case. The site is located on the south side of West 38th Avenue between Fenton and Harlan Streets. It consists of 3 addresses, 5800, 5900, and 5990 West 38th Avenue, made up of 23 lots and totals 1.89 acres. There's currently 1 commercial building at each address, all built in the 1950s. The site was platted in 1952 as the Fred L. Spallone subdivision. There are currently easements that run along the northern property boundary of the site that encompass the city's sidewalk and landscaping, as well as utilities and signs, which are all proposed to be maintained. The property is zoned mixed-use neighborhood, as are most of the nearby properties along West 38th Avenue. The property was included in the city-initiated rezoning, which took place along this corridor between Sheridan and Wadsworth back in 2011. West 38th Avenue is a primary arterial road, and most of the nearby uses are commercial. Further south and north of the site is residential zoning. While the mixed-use neighborhood zone district does not have minimum lot size or lot width requirements, design standards and setbacks are determined by the building design and use. Standard minimum side setbacks are 0 feet, which this proposal would meet. Since the buildings on the site are existing and there are currently no plans for development, any non-conforming dimensional standards will be considered legally non-conforming. The lot configuration is appropriate for the existing conditions and could also accommodate future redevelopment if that were to ever occur. Subdivision regulations are found in Article 4 of the zoning code. And just a reminder that a plat is a technical document that reconfigures lots, tracts, or parcels for sale or development. It removes, creates, or defines property lines, allows the city to evaluate right-of-way, and it allows the city to evaluate civil construction documents. As a reminder, the subdivision plat does not affect the zoning or permitted uses on the property. It enables development already permitted by the current zoning. It also does not look at site or building design. For this project, building design and placement are already in place. So the applicant's requesting approval of the replat to consolidate 23 lots into 3 lots to align with the existing development on the property. The applicant would like to replat the site to have each of the 3 buildings located on its own lot. And the reason for this replat is to clear the title for sale of one of the buildings. This request is considered a major subdivision based on the number of lots involved, which requires a public hearing before the Planning Commission. And in this case, Planning Commission will make a recommendation to City Council, who's the final approval authority. This is an excerpt from page 2 of the plat document, which is also provided in the staff report. Previous lot lines are shown in the grayish blue color on the screen, and new lot lines are shown in red. New easements are shown in purple. Each of the 3 proposed lots are logically configured to align with existing conditions, including buildings, parking areas, and access. The lots are rectangular, except that Lot 1 proposes an angled boundary line to align with the existing access. The proposed subdivision plat creates Lot 1, which is furthest west and on 5990 West 38th Avenue. It's approximately 129 feet wide by 140 feet deep and about 0.4 acres in size. It contains a vacant commercial building, which was previously used as a convenience store. The middle lot, Lot 2, at 5900 West 38th Avenue, is approximately 182 feet wide and 140 feet deep and 0.60 acres in size. It contains a multi-tenant building currently occupied by a cabinet shop and window tinting business. And the purpose of the subject plat is to clear up title and subsequent sale for this Lot 2. Lot 3 is for 5800 West 38th Avenue furthest east and is approximately 271 feet wide by 140 feet deep and approximately 0.87 acres in size. It contains a multi-tenant building currently occupied by an array of personal and retail services. Both the existing right-of-way widths along Harlan and Fenton Streets are substandard, and right-of-way dedications are required on this plat. The right-of-way dedications are to align with the current streetscape improvements that are already in place. This includes the sidewalk and landscaping, streetscape improvements. The second page of the plat shows the existing easements along the northern property boundary that will remain in place, and 2 new easements are proposed for gas and water service. Since Wheat Ridge is not a full-service city, we sent the application on referral to outside agencies, fire, water, and sanitation districts, as well as completed an internal review. There are no remaining comments on this application, and the plat is found to be approvable. Before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days, and letters were sent to property owners and residents within a 600-foot radius. The project was posted also to Wheat Ridge Speaks. 1 phone call was received inquiring about the proposal, but did not express opposition. No further comments were received. Ultimately, staff has concluded that the request meets the subdivision regulations and all agencies can serve the property. It will allow for sale of one of the existing buildings. Staff recommends approval of the request. This concludes my presentation. The applicant does not plan on making a presentation, but we are both here for questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. So I will now entertain questions from the commissioners. Please remember to refrain from judgment either for or against the request, and please hold your comments of support or concern until after public comment. Why don't we go ahead and start with Commissioner Kearns? Do you have any questions?
Sure, I have a quick question. I noticed there's an alley behind the parcel in question. Does each lot of this parcel have an alley access, or what does that look like?
Yes, there is a rear alley access that lines with the entire back.
And that'll remain open, the
Yes, that
access
will
doesn't
be
change?
maintained, correct, yes.
And does each lot also have a access fronting 38th Ave? Or some shared?
Does each one have its own unique access
Sort of,
point?
yeah, does each lot have its own driveway on?
They all have access to 38th, either from an individual or shared access point.
Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Commissioner Stern, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Disney?
No questions.
Commissioner Larson?
A couple of questions, primarily about ownership. Who owns the property now? Would you mind stepping up to the microphone, please? Provide your name and your address, please.
I'm Steve Fleer, and my address is 8008 Tohi Road, Parkland, Colorado.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that just real quick and spell your last name?
Fleer is F-L-E-E-R,
And your address again was?
8008 Tohi Road, T-O-W-H-E-E.
Thank you.
So the owner is Fred L. Spallone, Inc. And what we're trying to do is clear title for a sale of 5900 because the building was placed originally across the property line. And so it just made sense for us to clear and make it 3 easy parcels to sell.
So, thank you. The ownership is a single entity for what will be the 3 lots, right?
No, we sold 5990 to a tenant. That was their Oren's Cabinets, I think it was. But anyway, he had a lease for a number of years and asked if he could just purchase it, which he did. And then at that time, we realized through a survey that we had a problem with the lot lines.
Okay. And the intent then is if this replat is approved, you would sell the property on the west end?
No, they want to retain that
They
one.
want to retain that one, okay. Which one would be, it's the one that's already been sold?
Yep,
Is the
the
one that
middle
you're
one.
interested? I got you, thank
But we
you.
need to clear up the title.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And the reason you're making this application now is because these things have come to the forefront recently, and
Right.
you'd like to get them cleared up.
Right,
Is that correct?
yes.
Thank you. That's all I have for now. Thank you. Nothing.
Commissioner Shoki?
No questions.
Okay, great, thank you. And I have no questions either. I now would like to open the hearing for public comment. So if you wish to comment on this case, you'll have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Speakers cannot limit their time to hours. Has anyone signed up to speak?
No one has signed up.
Okay, is there anyone on Zoom who is raising their hand?
Again, there are a few people on Zoom. If you would like to speak, please either press *9 to raise your hand or click raise your hand. Nobody at this time.
Great. So just checking one more time, is there anyone else in the public who would like to
So there's a lot line for Lot 1 on the east side of Lot 1. It makes a abrupt diagonal turn as it approaches 38th Ave. Why is that, and should it come out as just a normal square corner?
So it aligns directly with the way the access point goes, so that's where
Oh.
the curbing,
I see.
so it's exactly replicated as what you see on the ground.
Okay. Thank you.
One comment, I would just like to say that I think this is a very logical and appropriate application. I've noticed that one of the buildings, I believe it's the one on the east, is currently being renovated. So there is work going on, and it looks like it'll be a very beneficial addition to that stretch of 38th, which, as we all know, has become Wheat Ridge's main street. I wish you guys luck on that, and we hope to see you soon. Well, congratulations so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to recommend approval of case number WS-21-04, a request for approval of a replat to consolidate 23 lots into 3 lots to establish clear title for existing conditions on property zone mixed-use neighborhood, MUN, and located at 5800 to 5990 West 38th Avenue for the following reasons. 1, all agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. And number 2, the requirements of Article 4 subdivision regulations of the Zoning and Development Code have been met.
Second.
Motion carries 7-0.
Hello again. For the record, I'm Stephanie Stevens, Planner in Community Development Department of the City of Wheat Ridge. I'm presenting case number 21WZ2109, which is a request for approval of a zone change from agricultural 1 to planned commercial development with an outline development plan and located at 4877 Robb Street. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met. Therefore, Planning Commission has jurisdiction to hear this case. The property is located on the west side of Robb Street between I-70 Frontage Road North and approximately West 50th Avenue. I-70 is located nearby to the south, while the city's boundary and the city of Arvada are at approximately West 50th Avenue to the north. The site is unplatted and totals about 3.4 acres in size, and it's presently vacant, unimproved lot. Both the Wadsworth and Swadley ditches run overland through the site with a significant grade change in the northwest corner of the site just north of the Swadley Ditch. The property is currently zoned agricultural 1, as are the properties to the north. To the south is the Wheat Ridge Industrial Park, which is zoned planned industrial development. To the east, properties are zoned planned industrial development, planned commercial development, agricultural 1, commercial 2, and commercial 1. To the west, properties are zoned planned commercial development and industrial employment. Most of the surrounding uses are commercial and light industrial, although 3 agricultural 1 parcels still exist north of this site and contain single-family residential homes. The request tonight is for a rezone from agricultural 1 to planned commercial development. The outline development plan accompanies the zone change request by establishing the zoning and development standards. The purpose of the request is to allow for development of a tree service business while preserving natural features that exist on site today. Staff advised that a planned development was the most appropriate because of the ability to customize permitted uses and also the ability to modify intensity of development within the site in order to preserve the natural features. The code allows for processing of ODPs and SDPs concurrently or sequentially, and the applicant has chosen the sequential two-step process. I'll go through the ODP document, then talk about the criteria of review and staff findings. The outline development plan establishes the PRD zoning. The ODP is 2 sheets in this case, which are attached to the staff report. The first page is a cover sheet with certification and signature block for property owners, planning commission, city council, and the mayor. There's also a character of development statement, development standards, and other standard notes. The second page includes the permitted uses and conceptual layout of the property, including access, open space, and planning areas. This particular ODP depicts the site broken into 3 distinct planning areas, transitioning from most intensive along the southeast of the site and least intensive to the northwest. The 3 planning areas are summarized broadly as follows. Planning Area 1 is located along the southeast portion of the site along Robb Street. It will contain typical developed commercial uses to support the business operations. Planning Area 2 is in the middle of the site between the 2 ditches and may contain some building, parking, and storage areas on the western portion, and lumber milling, greenhouse, and nursery plantings on the eastern portion closest to Robb Street. Planning Area 3 is located to the northwest of the site. It's next to the adjacent Agricultural 1 properties and is to be preserved mostly in its natural state with some allowances for outdoor storage of natural materials if screened. The table on the screen summarizes the development standards that are proposed in this ODP. To summarize, uses permitted are all uses established in the city's Agricultural 1, Commercial 1, and Commercial 2 zoning, with emphasis placed on encouraging uses that support employment and agriculture while maintaining natural features. The specific uses being sought with this proposal include the tree service business and supporting uses, which involve office, shop, retail, tree nursery, greenhouse, lumber milling, limited outdoor and indoor storage, temporary Christmas tree sales, seasonal farmers markets, and the potential for a caretaker's resident. They're limiting the height to 35 feet. And architecture follows typical standards in the Architectural and Site Design Manual, except for the request to allow metal as a primary material with a requirement for enhanced architecture along Robb Street, using stone or brick to enhance that facade. Setbacks are proposed to be similar to commercial zoning, with Planning Area 2 and 3 limiting development by restricting uses, thereby increasing setbacks to the residential properties on the north side. The maximum building coverage is proposed to be 25% of the overall site to match agricultural zoning. And it should be noted that no buildings will be allowed on Planning Area 3, the northernmost planning area, and this prohibition on structures buffers from the agricultural uses on the north side, avoids challenging topography, and protects the natural state. Parking is to be provided in accordance with mixed-use code standards. This is a remote location, and the use is not anticipated to bring high parking needs. In all other areas, the project is proposed to comply with the zoning code, including lighting, fencing, signage, and streetscape design. This is the sketch plan from page 2 of the Outline Development Plan, or ODP, with annotations. More commercial uses are permitted on the eastern end of the site closer to Robb Street, with fewer commercial uses allowed as the property extends to the west. The primary office building and shop for the tree service business, as well as the major improvements such as paved parking areas and detention, will be located in Planning Area 1. and will be oriented along Robb Street. A potential caretaker's residence could also land in planning areas 1 or 2. 2 access points are proposed to serve the property from Robb Street. Vehicular access will be limited primarily to planning area 1 and potential for limited access in planning area 2 if or when the Wadsworth Ditch is piped underground, with other planning areas to be mostly preserved in their natural state. The ditches provide a natural transition between planning areas, and areas along each ditch will be preserved for wildlife movement. The Wadsworth Ditch is furthest west, located between it's furthest south, located between planning areas 1 and 2, and will likely be piped in the future to support, with support of the ditch company. It will require their approval to underground. The Swadley Ditch is anticipated to remain unpiped and preserved in its natural state, with a new ditch crossing to be provided via skid steer. The planned development places standards to protect ditches which may serve as wildlife corridors, to create a buffer to the residential properties, to combine the limits of outdoor storage, and to prescribe where commercial activities and milling may take place. This PCD is customized so that the property can serve as a transition between the various land uses that surround it. It balances a desire to put the property to productive use and also a desire to protect natural features. We use several criteria to evaluate zone change requests, which includes consistency with the comprehensive plan. A full analysis of the criteria for consideration of the zone change are provided in the staff report. This image is an excerpt from the comprehensive plan, which provides guidance in terms of land use. The mixed-use employment designation encompasses this site and all surrounding properties north of I-70. The proposed zone change is consistent with the mixed-use employment designation while respecting existing agricultural nature of the area, and the commercial project supports the city's goals. It allows for an appropriate transition to agricultural properties to the north, as well as commercial and industrial properties to the west, south, and east by way of buffering and limiting locations of the more intensive activities. Lastly, it will facilitate development of a long vacant lot. As a requirement of the zone change process, a neighborhood meeting was held on July 26, 2021 on Zoom. No members of the public attended the meeting. Since Wheat Ridge is not a full service city, we sent the application on referral to outside agencies, including fire, water, and sanitation, as well as completed an internal review. We did not receive concerns or objections from outside agencies. Before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days and letters were sent to property owners and residents within a 600-foot radius. A few calls were received to clarify the proposal, but no objections were raised. No further comments were received. Staff believes the zone change request meets the criteria. It allows for a compatible and balanced land use, it complies with the comprehensive plan, and it promotes economic growth and quality design. All agencies can serve the property, and the proposal is in line with the criteria for a zone change to planned development. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval of the request. Planning Commission will recommend a decision to City Council, who will also review the ODP. If Council approves the ODP, the zone change would then be approved, and the applicant could move forward with a specific development plan and subdivision plat. That concludes my presentation. The applicant also would like to give a presentation, and we are both here for questions.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Good evening, sir. Before you begin, will you go ahead and spell your last name and give us your address, please?
My name is CJ Kirst with Tahoe Consulting, 5730 East Otero Avenue, Centennial, Colorado, 80112. Last name is spelled K-I-R-S-T. Good evening. I was just joking with Stephanie. She stole a lot of my thunder here. I've got a lot of the same information, but maybe a little bit more that'll help. I am here tonight representing the applicant, Rocky Mountain Hardwood Processing. We are proposing a zone change for the property. Property is 3.4 acres in size and is located approximately 400 feet north of I-70 on the west side of Robb Street. Robb Street is a little over a half mile east of Ward Road. Property has historically remained undeveloped and is located between commercial, industrial to the south, large lot residential to the north, senior living to the west, and Robb Street to the east. As Stephanie mentioned, there are 2 irrigation ditches, the Wadsworth and Swadley, running through the middle of the property. As has been mentioned tonight, we're seeking a rezone from Agriculture 1 to planned commercial development. Planned development is unique in that it is somewhat of a custom zone district instead of a straight zone type like commercial or industrial. Planned developments are a 2-step process, the first being the outline development plan and the second the specific development plan. We are presenting the ODP tonight, and that is shown in this slide. Both the ODP and the specific development plan are heard through public hearings, as Stephanie mentioned. The PCD zoning, in this case, would provide more flexibility on the property than in comparison to conventional straight zoning. May it be commercial or industrial in this case. This is important to regulate how the property can be used while still maintaining the 2 irrigation ditches and wildlife migration. The Easterly planning area 1 is proposed to have the hard improvements of business operation, whereas the planning areas 2 and 3 are proposed to maintain most of the existing site features while having some softer improvements to support planning area 1. As Stephanie mentioned, planning area 1 will likely include buildings for the business operations such as an office, a shop, and retail, including parking, drive aisles, and improvements to Robb Street. The building will front Robb Street with parking surrounding the front and rear sides. Planning area 2 will be used to support business operation with storage, both outdoor and some minor indoor, as well as some supporting uses like a nursery, greenhouse, and lumber milling. Some seasonal uses could include Christmas tree sales as well as a farmer's market. The 2 existing irrigation ditches will remain in use. Planning area 3 will for the most part remain as is and undisturbed with some outdoor storage use. Only outdoor storage of natural materials will be allowed, including tree storage, shredded branches, mulch, and drying wood slabs. Planning area 3 will remain in its native state. If outdoor storage of native materials is implemented, then a 6-foot opaque fence or natural hedge would be required. Areas along the ditches will remain unfenced to preserve wildlife movement. Planning areas 1 and 2 could at some point have a caretaker's residence on site, as Stephanie mentioned. However, only 1 would be allowed on the entire property. The frontage along Robb Street will be improved with curb, gutter, and sidewalk to match the existing portions to the south. In addition, the area behind the walk will be landscaped. These improvements will complement the street corridor similar to the improvements across the street on the east side of Robb Street shown in this photo, all providing a uniform and updated character to the property. As previously mentioned, the Wadsworth Ditch will be piped the entire portion on the property. The Swadley Ditch will remain open with one point where it can be crossed. It is important to note that the Swadley will be located within a 20-foot buffer as it will remain open. The ODP designates building setbacks and heights. Building setback minimums from Robb Street are 35 feet, and setbacks to the north, south, and west range from 5 to 10 feet. Stephanie mentioned the maximum building height being 35 feet tall, and then the maximum building coverage being no more than 25%, with no buildings on planning area 3. We believe this zone request to PCD meets Wheat Ridge ODP checklist criteria. One, the need for zone change. As mentioned previously, the change of zoning allows the property to maintain the open space and wildlife movement, as well as irrigation ditches, yet still allows for a commercial retail use that helps complement these site features for the property. The PCD is the right zone district to manage all of this. Straight zoning likely would not afford this. Present and future effect on the existing zone districts, development and physical character of the area. The property has never been developed and has remained Agriculture 1. The PCD zoning is a complementary zone district that allows the proposed permitted uses and land use preservation to work with the surrounding zoning. Since the property has not been developed, its development completes the last piece of this puzzle in a complementary and responsible way. Access to the area, traffic patterns and impacts of the requested zone on these factors. The site will be accessed solely from Robb Street, 2 driveways separated appropriately to provide ingress, egress, and circulation for customers, employees, deliveries, and first responders if necessary. The 2 driveways will be sited to ensure adequate stopping distance for each. It is expected that most traffic for the property will be coming and going to the west from and towards the frontage road to get out to Ward Road. Availability of existing facilities. The proposed development will not have a high demand for water or wastewater services. However, both will be provided. Water will be provided by the Valley Water District and sanitation by Fruittail Sanitation District, both coming from Robb Street. Due to the development controls established through this PCD, the site will not have a higher impervious rate. Our storm flows, however, will be released at a controlled historic rate into the existing storm sewer system in Robb Street. Electric and gas will be provided by Excel. Present and future effect on public facilities and services such as fire, police, water, sanitation, roads, parks, and schools, properties within the Wheat Ridge Police and Arvada Fire Protection District service areas. We have not received any questions or comments from either on this proposal. The proposed uses and zoning do not generate students, and therefore the demand for more schools or parks is not applicable. A decision of the relationship between the proposal and adopted land are policies of the city. We believe that we are meeting the goals of the Northwest Sub-Area Plan in terms of diversifying and creating new employment, maintaining diversified use of the land, as well as creating uses that will allow for a sustainable and resilient tax base. We believe this zone request to PCD meets the Wheat Ridge Municipal Code 26-303D for the following reasons. The change in zone promotes health, safety, and general welfare of the community and will not result in significant adverse effect on the surrounding area. The proposed zone change provides boundaries and limitations for the properties to be developed in a way that maintains open space and wildlife movement as previously mentioned. With uses that align with the surrounding area, the property once developed will enable more safety by having an owner-user on the premises. In addition, the property will generate retail sales tax and in turn help the general welfare of the community. The proposed use of the property is a nice transition from agriculture residential to the north and commercial industrial to the south. The development proposed on the subject property is not feasible under any other zone district and would require an unreasonable number of variances or waivers and conditions. The PCD zoning allows the protection of the existing ditches and wildlife movement that likely could not be maintained if straight commercial or industrial zoning was being proposed. The outdoor storage areas proposed can be specifically designated with a PCD, and the specific commercial uses can be prescribed closer to Robb Street in a manner that benefits the agriculture residential to the north. This customized zoning allows for a variety of land uses that will not burden or harm the wildlife or residential residential existence. Adequate infrastructure facilities are available to serve the types of uses allowed by the change of zone, or the applicant will upgrade and provide such where they do not exist or are under capacity. As I previously mentioned, there is adequate water, sewer, and storm facilities nearby that we will connect to. The comprehensive plan shows the property to be within the TOD site, as Stephanie mentioned. The rezone of the property allows the following goals to be met. The uses retain and diversify local employment. The uses proposed with this rezoning will allow the applicant to grow their business and offer a diversified opportunity for employment. The applicant produces live edge boards from their tree and branch removals with a goal to create zero waste component of their business. This business ideology not only helps the environment, but also creates employment opportunities that fulfill this demand. Increase the diversity of land uses. As previously mentioned, the protection of wildlife corridors and irrigation ditches coupled with commercial and retail uses created a diverse use of the property that has been desired for a long time. The property's location in between commercial, industrial, and agricultural residential creates an opportunity to complement each other. Establish and maintain a resilient and sustainable tax base. The property has long since been an attractive site for development interest, but given the wildlife corridor and irrigation ditch's existence, development has not moved forward. However, the applicant's proposal for the property creates a new tax base for the city, one that will continue to prosper the perpetual need for planting new trees, shrubs, and trimming existing species. In summary, we believe this rezone proposal creates a complementary land use opportunity for the property that preserves open space and wildlife movement, as well as creates commercial and retail opportunity that allows these characteristics to be maintained. Thank you for your time, and I am available for questions as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll now entertain questions from the commissioners, and why don't we start on your end this time? Commissioner Shelkey, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. Commissioner DiTullio.
None.
Commissioner Larson?
Thank you. My first question has to do with Rocky Mountain Hardwood. Not familiar with the company. Can you give me a little bit of background on who they are and sort of just, you know?
Yeah, it's a couple partners that have been in the landscaping business for quite some time that have been seeking a place to have their own physical location. They, as we've mentioned, not only prune and mulch, they also do have installation of landscaping, and therefore the reason being for the nursery, which would not be a retail nursery per se. It's really just a holding location. And then there would be some milling and retail sales of some of this material that could be stored on the property.
So the business this is not a startup business. The business already exists.
Correct.
Okay.
The two gentlemen have been in this industry for quite some time.
And do they have a facility in Wheat Ridge already?
They, in various locations, they've got some of their equipment and materials.
So this will give them sort of a base of operation.
Gives them a home.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
home, exactly.
Okay.
And CJ and Commissioners, we also
Yes.
have the owner on the Zoom call. If there's any questions that you want to turn over to him, you can also.
Well, and I appreciate that. It gives me a better sense of who they are. The existence of the two ditches is just a concern. Obviously, the ditch company will have something to say when you get to that point, but just the concern I have is that this could create some runoff into one or the other that probably doesn't need to go into a ditch.
We've had excellent cooperation from both Wadsworth and Swadley. We have a license agreement in place with Wadsworth already. They fully support piping it. Swadley obviously is okay with us leaving it open. The site flows from northwest to southeast, so the Wadsworth will be totally piped, and therefore nothing can get in it. As you move over to the Swadley, any of the runoff is going to be coming off of Planning Area 3, which is to remain in its natural state. So you're not going to see anything new that would get into that ditch.
Okay, thank you. And they're doing some lumber milling. Where does the raw material come from?
What is the raw
The
material?
raw material for their milling operation?
A lot of it comes from other, business
Oh, okay.
locations,
Okay.
for example.
Great, thank you. Yep, that answers my question. That's all the questions I have.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Disney?
No question.
Commissioner Stern?
No questions, thank you.
And Commissioner Kearns?
If approved, when can Rocky Mountain Hardwoods locate here and set up shop?
I missed that first part.
If approved, when can Rocky Mountain Hardwoods start business here and locate it?
They would love to start business tomorrow.
Okay.
We've got, obviously, the site development plan process to go through.
Okay.
And then the building permit component, and then construction. So it's a good year away at this point.
Sure.
But they would love to be able to start up tomorrow. if they
Okay.
could.
Thank you.
Another question.
Sure.
One more question. Discussion about the employment zone. How many people do they anticipate employing?
Up to probably 8 people total. It's not a heavily employed type of
Right.
business.
No, 8 jobs that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Any further questions from any of the commissioners? No? Okay. And I have no questions myself for you, sir. You can go ahead and take a seat. I now would like to open the hearing for public comment. Do we have any speakers signed up?
No one has signed up in person.
Okay, has anyone joining us by Zoom raised their hand?
I do have one person who has raised their hand, Ben Porte. If you would like to speak, you can at this time. Please give us your name, spelling of your last name, and your address, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. My name's Ben Portie, Portie. My wife and I own the property to the north. So we are 4901 Robb Street. We own approximately 3.2 acres with a couple houses to the north, 2 of the 5 houses that are zoned residential A1. So I have a few questions. So I hope it's okay to take a little time because I'm going to be the neighbor and just want to be a good neighbor to the new company here, but have a few concerns and questions first.
You do have 3 minutes, just so you are aware.
Okay, so in my 3 minutes then, that lot is with the 2 ditches and graded on the north side, very high. I don't know exact feet, but down to the south side, low marshland style water. Is there plans for any grading there to grade the land higher than where it is now, so it's not marshland? That's question number 1.
If you'll go ahead and ask all your questions, we will address all public comments and questions after
Okay.
we hear from everyone. Thanks, Ben.
Sure. Second one is that Swadley ditch that runs north of it on proposed Area 3 butts up to my property there, probably 2/3 of it. So how are you going to cross that ditch on your land? I guess would be another question. I didn't hear anything on proposals for that natural storage area, how you're going to get to that piece of land. Because right now, it's sectioned off by water. There's the Yuckum Ditch and the Swadley Ditch. And so I'm just wondering how you get to that piece of land. Third is, what proposals kind of take place for the city planning when there is residential homes and commercial comes in? Like, what does Robb Street look like in the future? We worked with City of Arvada because it's only, a few hundred feet to the north of us to put in those commercial warehouse buildings. And so the property and area seems to start going commercial. I own another piece of property on the south side of I-70, almost directly. And so I'm wondering then, with the city planning, what does it look like when you're in a residential area and kind of commercial use? And what is the city wanting to do with that area? Because I'm just concerned with my piece of property right there. Thank you.
Nobody else has raised their hand.
Okay, great. Would you like to respond to the citizen members' questions?
Yes. Thanks for your questions, Ben. You know that property real well. We are definitely going to have to be doing some grading in that southeast planning area 1. The idea is to try to get everything to flow to the east. We do have a detention water quality pond that'll have to be graded in. It's right now conceptually shown in that southwest corner of planning area 1. We have yet to get into the specific detail design. We know we've got that obligation. We've got to figure out how to get the runoff into that pond, treat it, and then get it back out to the east to get into Robb Street. So there will have to be some fill to make sure that that drainage pattern occurs. There is not going to be any grading that'll occur in planning area 3. As we've mentioned numerous times, that area is to really remain undisturbed. There could be some improvement grading-wise in planning area 2, really just to transition between planning area 1 and planning area 3. And then the second question had to do with crossing to Swadley. You can see on this map down in the southwest corner there, it does call out for a crossing. That's the location. We really don't expect, heavy equipment crossing it. We're probably talking a skid steer, frankly, to pick up trees and branches, nothing significant. So we will have to pipe that specific area to make sure that a vehicle like a skid steer can cross it. I think the other question was probably more directed for the city.
Yeah, and I'll take the last question, which was about sort of what is the city's plans for the future of Robb Street. And you saw the comprehensive plan. The whole area is shaded purple, though the city doesn't have any plans to legislatively rezone any private property on Robb Street that doesn't want to be rezoned. So there are the few remaining A1 pieces, and nor do we have plans to sort of add any sidewalks or curb and gutter on the balance of Robb Street. That's not a project or budgeted. I would say that we are cognizant that this is a transition property between much more intensive commercial zones and uses and the gentleman's property. And I think that's exactly why we chose a plan development or recommended a plan development here. The other potential rezoning it would be eligible for is an industrial employment district, which is in the area and is allowed to be rezoned, but we had real hesitations as a staff in terms of allowing that entitlement across the whole parcel. So we know it serves as a transition piece, and we tried to tailor this plan development to that end.
Great, thank you. Okay, before we move to you, Commissioner Disney, was there any other members of the public virtually that wanted to speak?
Nobody else.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and close the citizens forum. And before I entertain a motion, Commissioner Disney, you had another question?
I drove by the property to take a look at it and noticed that you mentioned that Zone 3, Planning Area 3 would remain in its natural state. And I noticed that it was pretty overgrown with weeds, and it seemed to me to be a fire hazard based on what happened last fall up in Marshall. So do these new property owners, I guess, plan on maintaining the property so that it does not pose a threat to fire if it is remaining in its quote-unquote natural state? It's a beautiful property, and I could see why it's kind of exciting that they're going to maintain it, but I just had that thought and wondered, based on the homeowner's
So
comment.
just to be clear, right now, Rocky Mountain Hardwood does not own the property.
Okay,
They're under contract, obviously, to a certain extent, closing once we get through a portion of this. So they can't really speak to how that planning area 3 has been maintained to date, but absolutely, I mean, that is their business. Once they own it, they'll, do what they need to do to make sure that that area is maintained and kept, in good order.
okay, thank you.
I have a comment.
Great. Okay, Commissioner Stearns?
The comp plan excerpt does show that the site is in the TOD area, so assuming this proposal moves forward to the SDP process, I would encourage staff and the applicant to consider including features that promote walkable access to the station.
Thank you. Noted.
Noted, thank you. Okay, at this point, if there are no further questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of case number WZ-21-09, a request for approval of a zone change from Agriculture 1 to Planned Commercial Development with approval of an outline development plan for the development of a tree service business for property located at 4877 Robb Street for the following reasons. 1, the proposed zone change will promote the public health, safety, or welfare of the community and does not result in an adverse effect on the surrounding area. 2, the proposed zone change is consistent with the goals and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan. 3, the proposed zoning, density, and land use are consistent with the intent of a planned development, compatible with surrounding land uses, and will result in a high-quality development. 4, the infrastructure in the area can support the development. And 5, the criteria used to evaluate a zone change support the request.
Second.
Any discussion by any of the commissioners? Or are we ready to vote? Call for a vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Great, thank you. I now close the public hearing. All right, we have one more case for you this evening, case number WZ-20-06, which is an application filed by Heartwood LLC for approval of a zone change from restricted commercial to planned residential development with an outline development plan on a property located at 7585 West 32nd Avenue.
One more time, for the record, I'm Stephanie Stevens, planner in the City Wheat Ridge Community Development Department, and I am presenting case number WZ-2006, which is a request for approval of a zone change from restricted commercial to planned residential development with an outline development plan at 7585 West 32nd Avenue. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and this digital presentation. The property is within the city of Wheat Ridge. All posting and notification requirements have been met, therefore Planning Commission has jurisdiction to hear this case. The property is located on the north side of West 32nd Avenue, one lot east of the Wadsworth Boulevard intersection. West 32nd Avenue is a minor arterial that runs east-west through the city, while Wadsworth Boulevard is a major arterial running north-south. The site is about 3/4 of an acre in size and is vacant aside from a parking lot. It was originally permitted in 2005 and intended to be used by the neighboring property to the west. The parking lot is currently unused and no longer associated with 3280 Wadsworth Boulevard, which is that neighboring property. The property is currently zone restricted commercial and has been zoned this way since the city's incorporation. Properties to the north, east, and south contain low-density residential uses and are zoned residential 1, residential 2, and residential 1A. Properties to the west are zoned planned commercial development, restricted commercial, neighborhood commercial, and residential 3, and contain retail, office, and multifamily uses. Crown Hill Mortuary, Cemetery, and Arboretum is located further to the southwest. The applicant is proposing to develop a site with 14 dwelling units, including 2 duplexes and 2 5-plex single-family attached townhomes. The request tonight is for the rezone from restricted commercial to planned commercial development. The outline development plan accompanies the zone change request by establishing the zoning and development standards. The code allows for processing of ODPs and SDPs concurrently or sequentially, and the applicant has chosen the sequential 2-step process. I'll go through the ODP document, then talk about the criteria for review and staff findings. The outline development plan establishes the PRD zoning. The ODP is 2 sheets in this case, which are attached to the staff report. The first page is a cover sheet with certification and signature blocks for property owners, Planning Commission, City Council, and the Mayor. There's also a character of development statement, list of permitted uses, development standards, and other standard notes. The second page includes the conceptual layout of the property as shown on the screen here, including access, open space, and development areas. This table summarizes the development standards that are proposed on sheet 2 of the ODP. The applicant has proposed a single-family attached dwellings as the primary use, but allows for detached single-family units also. No accessory buildings will be allowed. Density is proposed at 20 dwelling units per acre, which is higher than what R3 allows at 12 dwelling units per acre for comparison, but less than the maximum for planned developments at 21 dwelling units per acre. Height is proposed to meet the city standard for residential at a maximum of 35 feet, and current zoning for comparison allows for 50-foot height. Architecture follows typical standards set forth in the Architectural and Site Design Manual and differs to current mixed-use codes in terms of townhome design, including facade design and articulation and materials. In comparison, R3 does not have architectural standards. The proposed setbacks prioritize buffering of the rear 5-plex units from the existing residential properties to the east and commercial to the west. Bulk plane will also apply. Minimum landscaping is proposed at 30% of the total site, and maximum building coverage is proposed at 40%, which both match R3 development standards. An additional requirement of the PRD requires that 25% of the minimum landscape area be dedicated to private open space or private front yards. Parking is to be provided at a rate of 2 parking spaces per unit and a minimum of 3 visitor parking spaces. In all other areas, the project is proposed to comply with the zoning code, including lighting, fencing, signage, and streetscape design. This is the sketch plan from page 2 of the ODP with annotations. The setbacks are shown in red and building envelopes are shown in blue. The conceptual plan shows 2 duplexes fronting 32nd Avenue, which is at the bottom of the screen, and 2 5-plex townhome buildings tucked behind the duplexes and oriented perpendicular to 32nd Avenue. On this screen, the access drive is shown here in pink, and parking spaces are shown in purple. Open space areas are shown in green. 1 central access point is proposed along 32nd Avenue. It continues north to serve all units, with a hammerhead turnaround located behind the 2 duplexes that front along 32nd Avenue. 2 parking spaces per unit are provided in tuck-under garages, in addition to 3 visitor parking spaces minimum and bike parking located on site. A sidewalk is included around the perimeter of the site for pedestrian access. The site is also bordered with a landscape buffer and private front yards with increased setbacks for the northern 5 plexes to provide separation from adjacent uses, with shared open space proposed along the perimeter and rear of the property. We use several criteria to evaluate zone change requests, including consistency with the comprehensive plan. A full analysis of the criteria for consideration of the zone change requests are included in your staff report. This image is an excerpt from the comprehensive plan, which provides guidance in terms of land use. The site is categorized along the Wadsworth primary commercial corridor within the neighborhood buffer area and neighborhood designations. Per the comprehensive plan, the Wadsworth primary commercial corridor is appropriate for higher intensities and mix of uses, including multifamily uses, and calls for transition in height from the corridor to residential uses. The property is also within the neighborhood buffer, which is intended to function as a transition between low-intensity residential areas and higher-intensity commercial uses to the west. The proposed zone change is consistent with the neighborhood designation, and the project supports the city's stated goals of increasing options of home ownership and attracting a range of household types. It will also act as a transition from the higher-intensity Wadsworth corridor. This application is in compliance with the comprehensive plan by its proposed investment in a vacant site, by providing housing options, and by its compatibility with adjacent neighbors. As a requirement of the zone change process, a neighborhood meeting was held on April 28, 2020 on Zoom. 16 people attended the meeting, and notes from the meeting are included in the staff report. The proposal presented in April 2020 differed from what the enclosed ODP entails, so the applicant held another informal meeting in February of 2022 per staff's recommendations. One community member expressed mild opposition at that meeting. Since Wheat Ridge is not a full-service city, we sent the application on referral to outside agencies, including fire, water, and sanitation, as well as completed an internal review. We did not receive concerns or objections from outside agencies. Before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days, and letters were sent to property owners and residents within a 600-foot radius. We received one comment of concern on Wheat Ridge Speaks related to the potential for access drive to cut through and add traffic to the established residential properties to the north. This is not a feasible option, so that road would never go through on the north. And we also received a call from someone opposing the density and traffic that comes along with it. No further comments from that were received. Staff believes the zone change request meets the criteria of review. It allows for compatible and transitional land use. It complies with the comprehensive plan, and it provides opportunity for reinvestment and home ownership. It will add a different variety of housing type options to the area. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval of the request. Planning Commission will recommend a decision to City Council, who will also review the outline development plan. If City Council approves the ODP, the zone change is approved, and the applicant could move forward with the specific development plan and plat. That concludes my presentation. The applicant would also like to give a presentation, and we are both here for questions.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Good evening, sir. Would you please state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address, please?
My name is Peter D. Pappas with Pappas Architecture, 3143 South Broadway in Englewood. Pappas is spelled P-A-P-P-A-S. Welcome to the Planning Board, planning staff, and any community members that are present for this presentation of the Wheat Ridge Multi-14 Development, 7585 West 32nd. This is roughly at the northeast corner of Wadsworth and West 32nd Avenue. I think Stephanie has made an excellent presentation. I'm going to try not to repeat much of what she said. The ODP usually does not delve deeply into the design and the specific layout of a project, but we have developed this presentation even further to help the planning staff and planning commission understand our proposal here, as well as having some architecture and design shown on it. The owner for this property is Gerhardt Moore Holdings and Brent Metz. They wish to develop a project which includes 14 townhomes on the existing vacant site with a paved parking lot towards the front. That's the existing site. See if I can get. This is a picture of 14 from West 36th 2nd Avenue to see what the project will look like. To orient you on the site, we've created a vicinity map, which again shows it behind the retail strip center at the northeast corner. This document is page 1 of the ODP, which Stephanie has explained, that shows the site characteristics, setbacks. We have included second page here, as well as an existing survey. The existing site plan shows the property with the parking lot and the open grass space behind, surrounded by the retail strip and 5 residential properties to the north and east. The aerial again shows the site, as well as the 32nd Avenue accesses looking east and west. Photos of the site show that it's surrounded by large mature trees, of which we're going to attempt to save every tree on the property, although there is one large ash tree that staff has asked that we remove, but we're going to try to treat that tree so that it does not become affected by the ash borer. Our site plan, I've turned north to the right. 32nd Avenue, heading west, would go to the top of your screen. We have one access to the site roughly in the center of the site. Entering the hammerhead, as Stephanie mentioned, is for fire department access. We have shown 4 new buildings, 2 duplexes facing West 32nd in a very residential configuration, as well as 2 5-unit townhomes, which face front yards, which will provide a very residential feel. We have also, as shown, created large perimeter setbacks to buffer this property from the adjacent properties. Again, a view of the front of the buildings. The townhouse house units will have integrated parking garages at the ground level to allow more open space and less hardscape and less visible vehicles from the street. The current zone district is residential commercial, which will allow for mostly office uses and could be 50 feet in height. We have limited our height to 35 feet. Adequate infrastructure will be added as needed for the development, and as previously noted, has all been reviewed by the outside agencies. An elevation of the buildings shows lower level, which will have the garages at the rear, entries at the front, which face front yards, a small office or bedroom on that level. We go to a second level. We have a kitchen, living, dining room with a balcony facing the yards, the front yards. On the third level, we have 2 bedrooms and bathrooms to go with. The rear shows the garage access for each of the units. Materials, I'll go back one slide. The materials that we're using are predominantly on the front of the buildings a ballpark red brick with metal panels, obviously the windows. With the gable fronts, we are using asphalt shingles. At the rear, we are using the metal siding also, with the red color you see is a wood hardy board siding. On the side elevations, we've wrapped the brick at the lower level to the metal siding. On the upper level rooftop, you see a small deck which will provide views towards the mountains. Access to the property by the one single driveway will provide a project that does not appear to be large in scale. Each townhouse unit obviously 3 stories tall, with the garage and main entry on the ground level, which promote the residential feel. This would be a duplex unit which faces 32nd Avenue Again, you'll see the attached sidewalk at the front. You'll see the large front lot, front yard, as well as the access to the rear. Again, the single access for this property allows us to have 14 units and only have one access so that we're not doing two curb cuts along 32nd Avenue. The typical unit will be 1,300 square feet, which will provide a size of unit which provides a market rate housing that is attainable for people in the Wheat Ridge area. We are concerned that there is a lack of housing in this market, and we feel that the density of this project allows us to keep the price down so that it is a reasonable, again, market entry price. The Wheat Ridge multi-14 plan development will enhance a vacant fielded area transitioning between a commercial corridor from the west and Wadsworth for residential use on the north, south, and east. The development promotes pedestrian connectivity, bus ridership, and bicycle transportation while bolstering retail uses in the surrounding neighborhood. It provides 14 single-family attached dwelling units and meets the City of Wheat Ridge code requirements for Section 26-301C. The proposed development is located at a transition between a commercial area and single-family neighborhood, which will provide a buffer while establishing a building scale transition between the two uses. The development will bring diversity of housing options to the neighborhood, as well as connectivity through its street-facing yards. Also, as Stephanie indicated, we meet all of the criteria for a zone change in the City of Wheat Ridge. We respectfully request your approval of this project. I am here to answer any questions you have. We also have Sam Edelson, representative of the owner, to answer questions also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll now entertain any questions that the commissioners may have. Why don't we go ahead with you first, Commissioner DiTullio? Any questions?
Yes, I do. This is for staff questions. If this property was zoned R2 or R1, what would be the density for those zone districts if the applicant had been requested those zone districts?
So the R1 zone district requires a quarter of an acre of a lot, so only two lots would be able to be accommodated with this lot area. It would likely necessitate a flag lot design.
And how about the R2?
R3 the minimum for single-family homes are 9,000 square feet. Again, likely only maybe 3 lots because the width is a consideration as well. If it were to be a duplex lot under R2, very likely only 2 lots, again with a flag lot design.
And then, thank you. Is the bulk plane not going to be used on these, on the east and west side because they have a 15-foot setback? Is that the main reason why
It is proposed to use the bulk plane.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
And so what would that do for the light and air for the neighbors to the east and north?
So it basically requires that roof to be pitched to an extent or to develop shorter.
Okay. That's good. And then, is this an urban renewal area?
No, it's not.
So there's no tax incentives going through this project? For
Correct.
urban renewal? And then I guess the other question I have is, there's the driveway, and there's confusing in the packet. Is there actual garages or not?
Yes, they're tucked under garages on the first level. So you come in the entryway from 32nd Avenue down a drive, and you go underneath each unit for the garage parking. There's also 4 at-grade visitor parking spaces.
So there are the garages enclosed?
The garage is enclosed on each unit, yes, for 2 cars.
So then, when you drive into the driveway, there's going to be an asphalt road and then concrete on each side for the driveways? Or is the road actually acting as the driveway and
The road is acting as the driveway, yes.
and the parking?
Yes.
I guess the last question I have is this development considered what you call a slot development, slot housing?
No, it's not. The city adopted townhome design standards a couple of years ago to preclude that. The way that this design meets those is by orienting those units on 32nd towards 32nd. So slot home design is where you have the side elevation against the street, not engaging the public realm.
So if this was approved tonight and it goes to city council for final approval, do they have say on changing the ODP, or is that set tonight? Or can they make any changes to the ODP and then the SDP, or is it done tonight for the ODP?
The ODP still has to move forward to city council, so this is the recommendation.
And after that.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Schuelke, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. So the exit goes out on 37.
Yes, sir. Entry and exit on 32nd.
That is, that's part of 32nd, major basically, like the villas or Deer Creek Trail are coming back and forth there. Plus you have the bus stop there, and then you have a lot. So it's just, to me, it's kind of a concern, the additional traffic that will be coming out on the 32nd at that spot.
I think that's part of the reason why we recommended just a single access point. We sometimes see a loop road for a design like this, and then the townhomes get flipped, but we didn't want to have more than one conflict point. And the access point's generally in the same location as the existing one, and I think it's our opinion that the traffic generation is probably less than if it were to develop under the existing commercial zone district. So it's definitely a consideration. Those front two buildings are setbacks, so you have some site distance. You see some townhomes around the city that have a build to where they're much closer to that front property line. So trying to strike that balance for exactly that reason.
Okay.
Commissioner Larson, any questions?
Thank you. The first question has to do with emergency access. I know, and you can clear this, staff can clear this up. In the past, we've had developments proposed where the fire department, for one reason or another, would say, well, if the main entrance gets blocked, we need a secondary access, and I don't see one on this. So what did the fire department say about this?
So they were okay with the firehead turnaround that's situated behind the duplexes. That's their way to kind of back out and do that maneuver with the fire trucks.
So if the entrance is blocked, how do they get in?
They don't require a second point of access on all projects.
Okay.
So they were fine with this design.
Okay, thank you. And then and this case goes back almost pre-pandemic, because I noticed the neighborhood meeting was in April of 20. But one of the comments during the neighborhood meeting indicated that at the time there were 11 units, and we're looking at 14 now. What's changed?
So I'll let the applicant respond to this question, but there's been some ownership changes, correct?
Step to the microphone and give us your name, please.
Yep. Name is Sam Edelson, S-A-M, last name is E-D-E-L-S-O-N.
Would you please raise the mic a little bit? Sorry, thank you.
Can I get your address as well,
Oh,
please?
yeah, 1358 Gilpin Street, Denver, Colorado. So there's a question of additional units. So I think two things to address there. I'd say, firstly, personally, I'm a really big believer in trying to figure out what to do with a nationwide housing shortage here in Colorado. If you look at what we see throughout the city, there's just, and throughout the metro area, there's just not sufficient housing. I think that people who work in communities should live in communities. And in my personal opinion, this is the type of housing that allows people who truly service and live in Wheat Ridge to actually, who work in Wheat Ridge to live in Wheat Ridge. And so it's, my personal opinion that having, incremental housing is actually a net really positive thing for a metro area that is just severely short on housing. And because it was consistent with the design criteria for Wheat Ridge, and also consistent with the desire to have a kind of changing landscape from a commercial corridor to a single-family corridor, it seemed appropriate to me to try to, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I got into development to try to create more housing because I think it's such an issue. And that's why we added the units. So that's the crux of it. I guess additionally, I'll point out, I don't know if you guys saw the last design or if you have any memory of it, but in addition to, picking up a couple of units, I actually think we've created a much more beautiful design here. We've created a lot more green space versus the last design. In the last design, all the units face directly onto the street. A flat presentation, basically uniform, just a rectangular block. Here we actually take more units off of the street, and I think create a really beautiful street view of 2 duplexes, and then your rest of the units are actually centered now further into the property, creating more green space on either side. So I think you picked up units, but you actually picked up a design that feels a lot more neighborhoody.
Thank you. And one other question then, we are talking about townhomes that are owner, not necessarily occupied, but they will be owned by, and not rented out.
Yeah, we were trying to sell these to members of the community. So like I said, I really believe bringing teachers, firefighters, professionals who work in areas to live in areas. And this is, in my opinion, kind of the only way to do that is to create housing that people can afford that's below the median house price in Wheat Ridge.
All right. Thank you. And one last question then. Will there be a HOA involved or a special district, or how will the sort of property be managed?
So, and you might have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but at least in Denver, when you create townhomes, it's lot and block, and so because of that, you don't need HOAs, which I think is actually a really nice thing. I don't know if you would be any different with that.
Basically, we would create, many people call them party wall agreements. There would be an agreement among the neighbors for maintenance of the removal of snow, maintenance of the landscape and such. That will basically be an agreement between property owners. It won't be regulated by a HOA. These are, I don't know if the right word is fee simple, but each owner would own to the wall, to the ground, to the sky. So it's townhome ownership, not condo ownership.
Okay.
And
Great.
I'll just add in here, and I'm a real big advocate for that because when you do create that townhome ownership, you're giving people their own property that they can get onto the housing ladder with, and by eliminating that HOA, you just make it a more affordable community so that people can put their money into their homes versus into an HOA do.
Interesting. Great. Thank you.
Just to add quickly, we would be reviewing that through the SDP and the plat, and some type of common ownership agreement would be required just for the drive and common amenities.
Yeah, and that would come up during the STP?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I did see someone raise their hand in the audience. We will get to the public comment next, and you will have an opportunity to provide any comments at that time. Commissioner Kearns, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Stern?
One question for staff. Is there parking on 32nd in front of this property?
No on-street parking on 32nd Avenue.
Commissioner Disney?
How much market research did you do about the community of Wheat Ridge before you planned this development?
Would you mind clarifying what you mean by market research?
In terms of the nature of the community, the feel, the density of the community?
Sure. So, I mean, I as you know, I live in Denver, so I just frankly spend a decent amount of time in Wheat Ridge. We hosted a neighborhood meeting when we updated this plan. I think we had about 6 attendees. We know what we didn't mention in plan comments. One of the attendees was the woman who owns the commercial strip on Wattsworth and 32nd, who I think would prefer to see a project like this versus a vacant lot. So I think if you talk about do I know the feel of Wheat Ridge, I mean I spend time in Wheat Ridge, and I'm a member of the broader municipality or metro area, and like I said, I think it really all comes down to what do we do with the fact that humans are moving to our areas, And are we going to be community members who open up ourselves to the fact that people are moving here and we need to have people who work here or live here? Or are we going to, advocate for low-density, single-family homes that are unaffordable to the people who actually work in our communities?
What do you consider market rate in terms of what these are going to sell for and what you're describing as the people that will live here?
Sure. So I think the people who will live here, I think this should be affordable by teachers, policemen, firemen, people in the professionals in the community. When you ask me what I mean by market rate, as you guys know, inflation's 7.5%. I get construction budgets back, depending on what we're doing on different projects, but they're now routinely coming in at 20% more than what we were expecting them to. I believe that housing should be cleared in a market fashion, because we should be able to build housing without subsidy from the government that actually serves members of the community. I don't know what's going to happen in the economy between now and then. I know right now I absolutely plan to market these houses at below the average house price in Wheat Ridge, but
Which is what?
$649,000.
You think a school teacher or person making $70,000 a year can afford that?
Absolutely not. That's why we're trying to build housing that people can afford.
Okay, so, as already pointed out by another one of my colleagues, at the initial neighborhood meeting for this, when there were only 11 units, there was a lot of opposition to this project at that time, stating that it was too dense. And now you've crammed in 3 more into this narrow lot. Why was that not taken into consideration in your design?
Well, I think it actually is. There's 2 things there, right? One is that taken into consideration in the design, right? And I think if you just look at the last design versus this design, I would say the opposite. I don't think it's crammed in at all. I actually think we've created better living spaces. And then secondly, again, it just goes back to what kind of communities we want to have, right? And so when I look at what the kind of Wheat Ridge plan is, right? The plan for this area, and the reason that this is being considered, is because it's open to the consideration that there needs to be some increased density for housing. This plan is consistent with what is in your code, and I think that's why staff has supported it. And
I'll add something here. As we went from the 11 unit to the 14 unit, there were a couple of main considerations. Number one is, if this were to be developed as single-family residence, we would take the density way down. The cost of the units from normal economics would have to go way up. If we were to build single-family homes here in order to make this an economical project, or a project that you could build, you'd be selling those homes in the $1 million to $1.5 million range, as most single-family units are. When we go from 11 to 14 units, we're able to then divide the cost of the project by 3 more units, therefore keeping that cost down further. Also, as you go from, number one, this is essentially zoned commercial now. You could have a commercial building here with much more traffic coming to the site on and off all day long. You could build a building that is 50 feet high and with a larger lot coverage and less open space. Also, one of the premises of how we are developing nowadays, Wadsworth obviously is a commercial corridor. You would like to keep your housing, the density of housing near the corridors at a higher density, then falling off to a lower density as you get further away from the high traffic corridors. This gives you a transition from the residential properties to the north and east and south to the commercial route. It's also got good access to the buses along Wadsworth and such. So essentially, it's good planning to try to get the density along the high-traffic corridors, and we're trying to provide that transition.
No further questions?
Good evening. My name is Ann Brinkman. Last name is spelled Brinkman. My address is 7420 West 34th Avenue. Sorry, wearing this. I am a neighbor, and I was noticed on this. I could not go to I did go to the April 2020 public meeting, or neighborhood meeting. I couldn't get to the other one, so I'm here now. I am in favor of this. I should mention, I was a former planning commissioner, and so I've seen a lot of this happen in Wheat Ridge. I have no problem with this. This is a transition property. Nobody is going to spend huge amounts of money to be 200 feet from Wadsworth with the noise and the congestion and everything that comes with it. This is intended to be a transition property. It is a difficult property to deal with in the size, number one, and I'm going to say the orientation near Wadsworth. So with all that, yes, it would be great if there were less, but at some point the developer has to make some money on these, as he alluded to. But again, this is transition property, and I don't think the traffic will be particularly bad, especially since you have one in and out. I am going to make 2 points that are usually covered in the SDP, but I'm going to say them now in case I can't come to the SDP. I'm concerned about snow removal because there's really no place to put it unless you take up some of those parking spots, the visitor parking spots, and I'm concerned about the detention area. I know it's going to be submitted as part of the SDP, but again, this is a challenging lot. It's only so big. So I just want to call those out for your attention in the future if this is accepted. Thank you very much for taking our comments. Have a
Great,
good night.
thank you.
Thank you.
We have a second individual signed up to speak, and that's George. I'm going to mispronounce her name, Bintovka? Sir, would you go ahead and tell us your...
Yeah, my name is George Butkovich. I live at 7307 West 32nd Avenue. I've been a resident for 49 years. I've seen things come and go.
Can I get the spelling of your last name, please?
Pardon?
Can I get the spelling of your last name?
Yeah, Butkovich.
Thank you.
I have just a couple of comments. I guess since I don't have anything to sell, I don't understand why we're having the meeting on St. Patrick's Day. From the looks of everybody behind the counter there, I think we all would rather be at Clancy's drinking green beer, but rather than me standing up here to defend my neighborhood. Anyway, I think the use of the space is going to happen eventually, be it this development or something else. I like the fact that they're going to be single-family homes with garages and so forth. However, I have some considerations and some concerns. I've already seen discord throughout the neighborhood since the original letter came out in 2020. There have been 4 homes with 3 of the residents, longtime residents, moved away. The 4th home would be one belonging to Brent Metz. He lives, and he didn't live, but he owned the house directly across the street from me. He bought the house, fixed it up, sold it to a person that I thought would be a homeowner, and he has since turned it into a rental. Okay, so that kind of goes along with a lot of the other issues in the neighborhood. And point number 2, a lot of the residents, including myself, are older. We don't have the stamina. We don't have the energy to stand up here and fight things like this. This, I guess, is part of what I want to speak to. And
Sir, you
I don't
have
know,
a
I'm
minute
thinking
left.
as well that, because of the people moving away and the people that are moving in that are just renters, which I guess I have no objection about, but, it's going to be the domino effect. One person moves out, and case in point, the home right next door to this property. They've sold it, they're gone, it's history. So, anyway, I guess, the usual traffic and congestion that's already been addressed. Some of the issues I see with this thing is the visitor parking. They allow spaces for 4 vehicles. Okay, when the 4 vehicles have occupied the spaces, that means the overflow go to the neighborhood. Is that to be parked on 32nd Avenue or Webster Street or Vance?
Sir, I think you've reached your 3 minutes of public comment.
Pardon?
Your time for public comment is up if you want to just finish your sentence.
Okay. Anyway, I'd just say I am in favor of supporting this. However, I do not support 14 units. I would be in favor of 6. Let that be on the record.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there
Go to
anyone
Clancy's.
else from the public that would like to speak that did not sign up? Okay, please approach the podium.
My name is Jill Brunke, B-R-U-N-K-E, and I live at 3045 Vance Street. I was unable to
I'm
attend.
sorry, what was your address? Can you slow down just a little?
I'm gonna get my heart to
I know
slow
you're
down.
nervous.
3045 Vance. I was unable to attend the April 20th, 2020 meeting. I was moving 2 parents into assisted living at that time. So I'm here today, quite surprised on what I'm seeing up above. I do have some very, very concerns about it. And I'm going to be real quick here because of my time. The gentleman was saying it's going to be built for low income, low housing. That's the last thing we need in our neighborhood. We have people moving out due to the fact of the changes of Wheat Ridge. And by the matter of fact, I've been a resident all my life in Wheat Ridge since 1966, before I-70 was even built. So a lot of changes I've seen. We don't need low income. We've got people moving out of our neighborhood, and they are selling their homes for over 600, close to 700, some of them. We're going for $715,000, $766,000. If we're going to get lower income people coming in, I'm going to be moving. I'll get out. I'm concerned about the height of the buildings. They're not very appealing looking at all for the area. If they were built like the ones on 32nd, and I believe it's Yukon, where they're single-family homes, and there are fewer of them, that I could live with. But those there are just, they look like low-income housing. Again, with the parking for relatives or friends that are coming over, we're already getting the overflow from the farm off of 32nd, clogging up our streets. It seems like anymore developers are building in any small, any open space they possibly can. They'll cram them in there. And sure, they're not right up against the street of 32nd like they are on 38th, but that's all industrial. That's businesses there. This is a residential area. We need residential-looking homes. Fire. Again, if they have relatives, friends, visitors parking in there up against their garages and a fire breaks out, how are they going to get in and out of that place? And again, with the snow removal. We have neighbors that are removing the snow on our streets, and we're finding little areas to put it in. Where is that snow going to go? And are the residents going to plow that? I doubt it very much.
Okay, just a reminder, your timer is almost up.
Okay. And the height of the buildings. You know, if they can keep them down in a residential height, so it doesn't become such an overbearing looking building. Even the businesses there on 32nd and Wadsworth right there are lower. And again, it's not all about money.
Okay, thank you so much for your comment. Is there anyone else in the audience today, physically here today, that would like to speak? And I know we may still have some people on the Zoom meeting as well. Please state your name, spell your last name, and your address for us, please. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Sandra Tolve, T-O-L-V-E, 3190 Vance, corner of 32nd and Vance. This really is kind of a shock for me. I've been here 20 years in Wheat Ridge and loved every minute of it. Those units will block my view west. Even though it is Wadsworth and there's businesses there, we still have had trees and a lot to enjoy. The traffic on 32nd has really up in 20 years, almost highway speed sometimes, which is not good for people coming and going out of there. They have a hard time when they leave the corner businesses, when they come out on 32nd, they have a hard time getting out of there safely. I watch the bicyclists up and down, many every day. Doesn't make any difference what the weather is, they're there. And the parking is the other. Jill said that we get the parking from the farm, the overflow, they park on our street. We have nowhere for our guests or anyone to park. Those people, if they have friends over, they're going to have cars, and it's going to be overflowing in the neighborhood. And I am against low-cost housing in our neighborhood. If they bring buildings down, it's fine. If they're too high, that's like 3 stories, it's too high for our neighborhood. And I'm against it. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Tammy, do we have anyone raising their hand on Zoom?
I do have one person, looks like an Anna Gerhardt. If you would like to speak, you can. Please give your name, spelling of your last name, and your address, please.
Yeah, it's Ben Gerhardt. I'm on my wife's Zoom account, so that's why her name came up. And it's Gearhart, and the address is 3931 Julian Street, Denver, Colorado. Want to thank everybody for their time on St. Patrick's Day and going late into the evening, so I'll be super quick. I echo the same thoughts. I'm part of the development group with Sam and Pete, and I echo some of the same thoughts from delivering housing at a attainable price point. We engineered these particular units to a square foot, a bed bath count, and a building material perspective to be able to get significantly under the average price point of $649 in Wheat Ridge. Right now, we're in a supply crash. We're in a situation where building costs and supply chains are going up by 20 to 30%. And this particular lot isn't suitable for a lower density single family. Some of the concerns on fire, we are addressing those through a hammerhead and a wide enough drive aisle, and we're certainly going to work through SDP to address any other concerns with fire in that perspective. From a height perspective, we're going to be at 30% less than what the current zoning allows, up to, I believe, 50 feet. And from a building coverage perspective, we're 50% less than what the current zoning allows. I also echo the thoughts of Sam on allowing housing for people that work and live in Wheat Ridge. And we haven't indicated that this is a low-income housing project or a AMI project, but an attainable price point, because these are the circumstances that we're faced with in this building environment, this anemic housing environment. And I really feel passionately about that, and appreciate all those comments. One of the gentlemen that spoke to the 6 units was at our neighborhood meeting, which there's notes on that, and he had been in favor of a man cave project, which I don't know what people's thoughts are on that, and I'll just leave it at that. But my passion is providing housing at a attainable price point. And thank you very much. I'm probably out of time now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that was the only public comment we had on Zoom? Or
Yes,
public?
is there, if anybody else is willing to speak on Zoom, please raise your hand. Click raise your hand. There is nobody else.
Okay, and one more call to people present here. Would anyone else like to speak before I close the citizens forum? Okay, great. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and close the citizens forum. Before we entertain a motion, would any of the commissioners like to ask another question or make a comment?
Thank you. One quick question for the applicant. Is the property under contract contingent on zoning changes, or do you own the property now? So it is contingent. Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
I have a comment. I'm well aware that we have a housing shortage, and it's important that we have diverse housing in our community. The density that is proposed in this project, while it is adjacent to Wadsworth, I feel it's more appropriate for a corridor such as 38th Avenue, perhaps Kipling, or on Wadsworth. This neighborhood, as I look at the aerial, it's surrounded by the typical Wheat Ridge lot, the typical housing that Wheat Ridge has been known for. I am not particularly thrilled with the fact that this project initially had fewer housing, may not have looked as nice. And these units are small. I tried to figure out what 500 square feet would look like. I lived in a 900 square foot house, and that was too small for me. I don't think parking will be an issue because there's not going to be that many people that can inhabit these. And also, it may not be quote-unquote a slot home, but the buildings behind the duplexes are slot homes. And I think it's just an inexpensive way to throw up a lot of units, and I realize developers have to make money, but I just don't think that this project is appropriate for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I do believe the units are actually 1,300 square foot, correct? I saw you squirming there in the audience. And I think it's split across the different levels is maybe where you heard that 500 square feet. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Larson.
Thank you. Reading through this, and I kept looking for something in there that would tell me that this as proposed, the development is inappropriate, and I can't find it. Our job as planning commissioners is to, on the merits of the proposal, not whether we think that it's appropriate for the neighborhood. If the city wants to change the way that we develop property here, then the city's ordinances ought to be revised. But the way this is proposed and the way the project has moved forward, I think it is appropriate for this. As mentioned, a transitional property. It is not being plopped in the middle of somebody's neighborhood. I think it is, again, an appropriate use of the land that was unattractive for commercial development, and I think it makes sense in a transitional neighborhood, in a transitional zone like this, to put in in this case, the maximum, because as we were told by the applicant, unless there were this number of units, the project would not be economical and would not be developed, and who knows what would happen down the road. So I am going to support this project.
Thank you. Commissioner DeTullio.
Thank you. So just for the public's knowledge, a rezoning is not a guarantee by right. A rezoning is when the city, planning commission, and the council have the ability to make changes, recommendations, especially on a PRD, because a PRD is a blank slate where you change and add and delete projects. And so this is a rezoning, and it's not a guaranteed right. If it was a subdivision plat, of course, we'd have to approve that by law, or you get sued and lose. But the comment that it was going to be low-income housing is not the same as affordable housing. Now, affordable housing is when somebody that's making potential, like a teacher, like I used to be, making a certain amount of money, and that these would be affordable. But based on the size of these and the height and the design, I don't see them being affordable. And I think that, I hate to sound like Jim Dutton here from Yellowstone, but there's got to be some compromise between the current landowners that are adjacent and to this development. I applaud you for wanting to be the savior of all the housing in Colorado and getting people homes and being able to buy a property and live where they work. But there's also people that have been living here and bought in Wheat Ridge because of the rural feel in an urban area. And I'm all for infill development when it makes sense. And this is the time when we have to say it doesn't make sense or it does make sense. But right now, the way you went from 11 to 14 units, and really that driveway down the middle looks like an alley, and that's basically what it is because it's concrete from wall to wall. I think that you might have to go back to the drawing board. You know, I don't know this is only a recommendation board. City council has to make the final decision. I'm not there anymore, so they can fight with it. But for me tonight, based on this plan, on a PRD, which is a planned residential development, which allows the staff and the developer and the commission to make changes and adjust things, I think there needs to be more adjustments for this before it goes forward. So if there's a motion for approval, for recommendation of approval, I'll be voting no tonight.
Thank you. I just wanted to actually put in a comment myself. I do recognize that it is very difficult for members of our community to see how quickly housing price has changed. I know there is no way I could afford to buy my home, or if I sold my home here, buy a home anywhere. That is the reality of our situation kind of all along the Front Range and throughout Colorado for that matter. And, you know, add to that the fact that we have housing shortages. Anytime new housing does come in, it is difficult to make it affordable for the average person's salary. The only way the city can make housing more affordable is through requirements and subsidies, and even that makes housing only available and affordable to a very small few people, and it doesn't begin to fill our need. So I do understand from a private developer perspective, you know, how do you make this pencil out and make it as affordable as possible based on the demand we are seeing in our state, as well as kind of where the market is at for housing. It is a scarce resource, and though we may not always like the prices we're seeing, is kind of where we're at, and the Planning Commission really does not have any way to control kind of the price, the market price of housing right now. So with that, I'd like to see if the commission is ready to entertain a vote.
I have a comment. Do you have a comment? I have a comment.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Commissioner Kearns.
So, first, I'd like to just compliment you guys on using high-quality materials for this type of development. I noticed it. I think the design looks a lot nicer than some of the designs that I've seen in other parts of town. So, to me, I'm not offended by this at all. I know some of the traditionalists are aghast by something like this, but this is a product that's a response to market conditions. To me, we need this. We need the density here. We need the attainable housing that people who work normal jobs can actually maybe afford. So thank you for, I love the brick. I think this is, I've seen materials used on products like this that is really bad. So I think you guys have taken an extra step to use nice materials, to put in a nice design, very light and airy. So hats off to you. The height of this actually helps the neighborhood in a way, because it's going to help block sound from Wadsworth. So, yes, it's tall. I feel a little bit bad for some of the neighboring lots to the east having rooftop patios and rooftop decking overlooking some of the backyards, but you can use screening, and this attainable housing provides a diversity of housing choice in Wheat Ridge, which is what we are here to promote. This is a walkable development, walkable to nearby businesses. I think the businesses right around here are actually going to benefit from these additional rooftops. And it's walkable to the park. So I'll be voting yes on this. Thanks.
Commissioner Stearns?
So I echo much of what Commissioner Kearns said, and I do want to thank this team for bringing attainable housing to our community, and state that I believe neighbors of all income levels should be welcome in all of our neighborhoods, so thank you. And I will be voting yes today.
Thank you. Commissioner Shelkey, I wanted to give you the opportunity if you had any comments or questions.
I don't at this time.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair, just one more comment, and this is for staff. We heard 3 issues that will have to be addressed, I think, before we get to the next step. One is the detention, and it's just not clear where that's happening. The other is the issue of parking. 4 guest spots may not be enough, and whether the city figures out some way to park on 32nd, but that has to be addressed. And then I think the other one is snow removal, and it's Wheat Ridge and we get snow. Where does it go?
Noted, thank you.
Great. Any other comments from the commissioners?
One more on the snow removal. I see green grass on all the ends of the driveway. Looks like there's green grass on the north end, west end, and east end. You can plow snow onto that grass. It will be able to melt off into the swale, infiltrate into the grass. Doesn't seem like that big of an issue to me, but worst case scenario, some of the snow has to get pushed into a visitor's parking space, but I feel like it's not you plow it somewhere that faces south and it's gone in a couple of days.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, I will go ahead and entertain a motion at this point.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of case number WZ-20-06, a request for approval of a zone change from restricted commercial, RC, to planned residential development, PRD, with approval of an outline development plan for property located at 7585 West 32nd Avenue for the following reasons. The proposed zone change will promote the public health, safety, and welfare of the community and does not result in an adverse effect on the surrounding area. The proposed zone change is consistent with the city's goals and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan. The proposed zoning density and land use are consistent with the intent of a planned development, compatible with surrounding land uses, and will result in a high-quality development. 4, the infrastructure in the area can support the development. And 5, the criteria used to evaluate a zone change support the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Let's call for a vote.
Motion carries 5-2.
Okay, great. I will now close the public hearing.
If I could just make one follow-up comment, this does proceed to City Council for hearing, and that is scheduled for April 25th, Monday, April 25th.
April 25th.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda is new business. Are there, looks like
yeah.
our first item is upcoming dates.
Yes, upcoming dates. So we will plan to have both Planning Commission meetings in April on the 7th and the 21st. We know we'll have cases for both. And then a couple of other updates for you, this time more business related than development related. The plat that you saw tonight, one of the westernmost parcel right at the hard corner at Harlan, Huckleberry Roasters has been working with us to modify that building. They're in building permit now, but that's an exciting addition to the corridor. Yak and Yeti recently opened on Kipling. You may have seen that between the rec center and the creek. They were hoping to open like a year ago, but they had staffing challenges, as many people have. So I know they're excited to be open. And then you probably noticed that Mestizo Brewing is sort of back under construction. That's at Pierce on 38th. It was a bright green, Kelly Green building, now yellow. So that's a brew pub with Mexican food. So moving forward, which is exciting. Upcoming study sessions, we are very busy in our division, so I just wanted to share for you and the benefit of the listening public. We have 5 upcoming study sessions out of our division on April 18th. We are giving an update to council on Let's Talk, the most recent blitz, as well as a discussion of accessory dwelling units. So that ADU ordinance, if we get direction to proceed, would come to Planning Commission later this spring or summer. I think we've mentioned this before, but the city received a grant from DOLA related to the creation of an affordable housing strategy and action plan. We're hoping to have that awarded on March 28th, and that would be a quick start into policy discussion. So affordable housing will be a topic of discussion at City Council on May 2nd. We're still working to refine that scope. We will certainly engage the Planning Commission at some point during that process. And then on May 16th, we are going to be giving an update to City Council on the 44th Avenue plan. We'll bring a lot of that content to you as well, maybe in a sort of augmented new business update at some point in May. And then bulk plane, which I think we talked about last time, was on the future agenda and then got calendared as well for May 16th. So lots of topics. And because it's St. Patrick's Day, the Leprechaun has brought you 2 takeaways. We have 44th Avenue yard signs in 7 stakes. So we invite you to take a yard sign and a stake. If you want to put it in your yard, that's great. If you want to slime a neighbor, friend, or family member, that's fine too. We still have the survey and map activity on What's Up Wheat Ridge open for another couple weeks, I think, right?
Yep, till the 26th.
Thanks. And then we will have in-person and online activities sort of for the duration of the project. So if you're willing to see who can keep their yard sign up the longest, it's a informal competition. And then what's also sitting over on the side table are some business cards for Wheat Ridge Speaks. It's probably been a while since we saw you. And so if you want them, in case you ever find yourself in a conversation about a case you're not supposed to talk about, it's an easy out by handing over that Wheat Ridge Speaks business card. Direct people to that site. Lucky you. That's all I have for tonight.
Lauren, are we
Yes.
doing a planning commission study session?
We don't have anything scheduled. Did you have a specific topic in mind?
Well, I know it came up at the last meeting that I was not able to attend, but I did watch. And it seems like there's an interest in the topic.
For bulk plane?
Yes?
Yeah, the consensus that I heard was to encourage council to have that study session so we can advance an ordinance.
And you did mention they were going to bring it up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think the topic, we usually do a study session when we're seeking policy direction. So sometimes we have study sessions with you all on a specific topic or code amendment. I don't think you will need a study session for bulk plane if we get their direction to proceed with an ordinance.
And no Jerry Dahl session on ex parte communication?
We haven't had a training session in like 3 years since pre-COVID, so we will probably look for.
It's memorable.
They are good. Yeah, they're good reminders. If we have a month where we don't use both of our meetings, at some point we will probably try to pencil that in. Yes.
And I guess I had a question about the affordable housing strategy. I understand at some point that will probably come to us, but you said you were having a study session with council to kind of scope what the strategy looks like, or could you clarify that?
Yeah, so they're not establishing the scope with a consultant. So a consultant will lead us through this process who's has more expertise than we do. You know, a lot of the grant requirements mean that this is sort of a technical document. So it's a lot of data analysis. What are our existing housing stock? What are our needs? What is that gap? There's a enumerated list of affordable housing tools that you're required to assess through this state program. So that will all be happening. And then, yes, the consultant will meet with council, who sort of directed us to do this, to understand what their policy direction is. The way I foresee planning commission's role, like any sort of community-wide project, you are welcome to participate in the public activities, which we have not yet scoped. But I think the outcome of this, the action plan, will very likely have tools that will impact the work that you do. So I would envision that if we have a specific meeting with the planning commission, that it's maybe on the later end of the project, so we can talk about what tools or action plans, whether it's a policy tool or a code change or some other implementation technique that we need to have a discussion with you all about. And then a variety of other stakeholders sort of during that process.
Yeah, and I just wonder if at some point during, you know, like when the technical assessment is complete, because it seems like we have a lot of consistent questions about what is the state of housing, what is the, you know, what does the market really look like, that in some cases is probably coloring people's perspective on how we respond to things. So maybe sharing some of the results of that technical assessment so that we're continuing to get educated on the reality of housing.
Tonight's case is a great example of that, right? Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of our staff's goals is to use this process as education sort of for everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah, really looking forward to that.
Great.
Good. Were we on new business or old business? Okay, is there any old business? I guess we finished with new business.
No.
Okay, well, then with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Or do we just adjourn? Hold on. I said I would entertain a motion
Madam
for
Chair,
adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Let's call for a vote.
Motion approved, 7-0.
There we go.